What's up, guys? This is Mike Casu, and you're listening to the Brute Strength Podcast. This week, I interviewed the Boston Red Sox sports psychologist, Justin Sua. This one is absolutely incredible. We talk about mental performance, reducing stress, increasing focus, a million different things related to mental toughness and performance psychology. This will help you live a happier, more stress-free life, as well as perform better as a leader, athlete, coach, etc. It's a must listen. Before we get started, if you would, please go to brutestrengthtraining.com/podcast/reviews and leave me a review. Thank you. Enjoy the show. All right, what's up, guys? I'm here with Justin Sua, the sports psychologist of the Red Sox. Justin, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for carving out some time for this. I'm very excited to learn from you, dude. Happy
to be here.
Let's start out. Tell people a little bit about yourself. I called you the sports psych for the Red Sox. I'm sure you have other titles as well. What do you do? What's your daily life look like? What all are you involved in?
Yeah, that's such a good question because even my wife and my kids have a hard time telling people what I do for a living. My formal title with the Red Sox is Mental Skills Coordinator, and ultimately my job is to help people perform on purpose with purpose. And the question is, okay, what do you mean by that? And basically what that means is you'll have a whole bunch of coaches, you'll have parents, you'll have instructors tell people, hey, you got to be confident. Hey, you got to relax. Hey, you got to focus on what you can control. All this great advice. And my job is to put meat on that and to teach people how to do those things. How do you relax under pressure? How do you not beat up on yourself when you're failing? How do you be confident when you're not getting the results that you want? And really teaching people principles that they can really grasp and understand to help them perform at a high level in whatever they do, whether it be a leader or a coach or a parent or a baseball player. I've worked with the military, combat medics. I've worked with coaches, amateur, novice athletes, elite athletes, Olympians, hairstylists, CrossFit competitors, you name it. And so I run the whole gamut. It's a blast.
Well, and it sounds like you're a fucking salesman too. You sold me, man. Where do I sign up? Shit. You said you worked with just about everybody under the sun. You work with the baseball team. What other capacities do people work with you? Do you have a private practice? I know you do some traveling and some events and stuff like that.
Yeah, you know what? I love to help. I love to teach, but I'm not one of these guys who's, hey, 8 tips on how to be more mentally tough and the 5 things you need to do to be more motivated. I just have this knowledge. I have this experience, and people will hear my podcast or someone will be like, man, Justin, can you work with this person? They'll shoot me a tweet. They'll shoot me a direct message on Instagram. Hey, Justin, can you come speak to our organization? Can you come speak to our box? Can you come speak to our gym? And I look at my calendar. If I can, I say yes. If not, then we find a day and a time when I can. And I'm really open. I do have books, a couple of books out there for parents. Coaches will bring me in. Universities will bring me in. Sports psychology departments will bring me in. And so it's kind of I love to speak. I love to help, but it's nothing formal necessarily. I'll go out and help where people need.
I love it, man. So how did you get involved in sports psychology in the first place?
Yeah, I ended up realizing I played college baseball at BYU, and it wasn't until that moment. Yeah, so it was that moment when I realized for some reason I didn't throw as hard as the All-Americans. I didn't have all of the accolades. I mean, necessarily, I didn't have like the background, this God-given talent that they had, but I was successful. I was an All-American. I was doing really well, and I ended up realizing, wait, there's something different about me. There's something that's I don't know what it is, but we had a sports psychologist come to speak to us, and he was talking about self-talk and motivating yourself and learning from failure. And everything he was saying, I was looking around, I'm like, this is stuff I already knew. I was already doing this stuff. This stuff my parents taught me to do. And it was rocket science to other guys on the team. And so I go up to him afterwards. I'm like, wait, how do you have the authority to be able to teach on this stuff? He goes, oh, got my degree in sports psychology. And from that moment on, I said, you know what, that's what I want to do, because it really came natural to me. Yeah, it came natural. And so I looked up and I ended up realizing, wow, there's this entire field of sports psychology. Now, a lot of people are like this. And I like to clear this up for people. There are clinical psychologists out there, and they're great. They're wonderful. We need them. That's not me. There are counseling psychologists out there. They too are great, are wonderful, and we need them. And that's not me. But then there's this branch, this spin, not even a spin-off, but this field called performance psychology. The performance psychologists, or the performance psychology practitioners or coaches, these are the guys who, like myself, we don't deal with depression necessarily. We aren't the clinical issues. We aren't the therapists are going to sit you down on a couch and you're going to tell us your feelings, and we're going to go back and tell me about how you were when you were 5. Tell me about this experience. No, I don't. Not to say that I don't care about those experiences, but my only job is to help you perform at the highest level right here, right now. Mm-hmm. If you're a CrossFit athlete, all I care about is how do we help you get more reps? How do we help you do what you do faster and better? And that's it. Yes, you probably have a lot of baggage in the background and problems, but how do you focus through those things in order to get you to perform at the highest level possible? And that is my field.
Right. So it's interesting. You say you don't deal with some of the things like depression and some of those negative feelings, but you talk a lot about awareness and purpose and all of these things that will kind of indirectly or sometimes directly help with those kinds of things. Do you see people's moods and kind of demeanors change after working with you?
Absolutely. And it is basically, I do. And to throw a caveat to that, I work hand in hand with clinical and counseling psychologists. Mm-hmm. And if we do get into a spot where I can tell, hey, this is beyond my training, this is going somewhere that chemical imbalance or whatever it may be, which happens to even elite athletes, I refer them to a trusted colleague of mine who this is what they do. But you hit the nail on the head. To teach people to own their thoughts, they can own their emotions, to own their feelings, and then to realize that they can learn from their failures, to realize that, hey, if you fail, learn from it. It doesn't have to be something that defines who you are as a person. Hey, let's learn from it. And as just seeing that and understanding that and believing that, learning that, wow, okay, I can change the way I view this circumstance. Mm-hmm. That in and of itself will create this freedom. They'll liberate themselves from the need to be perfect and the weight of perfection, knowing that, hey, I can learn, they can expect it and thrive for it, but know, hey, I can learn from it and I'm not going to be perfect. And that in and of itself will just create this weight off their shoulders and just help them, be a little bit more relaxed, be a little more happy, and just go out and do what they do.
Right. What's your overall goal when an athlete comes in? I mean, you have mental toughness, you have focus, you have all of these different facets of mental psychology in general. What's your goal when you first meet a new athlete or leader of some sort?
Yeah, it's to understand them. My first goal is to just understand them and help them understand themselves. I want to know what motivates them. I want to know what drives them. I want to know who their favorite coaches have been and what coaches they haven't liked. That gives me a little understanding mm-hmm. of the kind of coaching and kind of feedback I can give them. I want to know what their dreams are, their goals are. I want to know how they respond to getting punched in the face. Mm-hmm. I want to hear their worst failure. I want to hear what they do. I want to know how they view obstacles and challenges. I want to know and I ask all of these different questions. I want to know if they're coachable. Can you be coached? Are you prideful? You have this ego inside of you that won't allow you to be coached. I want to know who their go-to people are. Who are people in your life who inspire you, who help you can become a better person? And I love to know those things. And then I ask them, okay, what do you want from me? Where do you need help? Where do you see help? And so mental toughness, a lot of people are like, oh, Justin, help me be mentally tough. And I'm like, okay, what does that even mean? I don't even know what that means. Right. Mental toughness could be focus. There's so many different facets to it. And I just really want to help my guys and the men and women who I work with understand that. I've seen guys who are extremely focused, just laser focused, but they crumble under pressure. I see guys who are really good under pressure, but they lack motivation. I see guys who have tons of motivation, but they lack confidence to perform against someone who is at a higher level than them. And so I really teach and taper my training to the needs of the person or the organization I'm working with. And so I do a lot of listening at the very beginning.
Do you, and so you work with everyone from, I'm sure, novice athletes to the most elite in the world. Do you think athletes in general, or which athletes tend to have this awareness already about themselves, right? They can rattle off, this is my weak area, I need help with this, and which ones don't?
Yeah, which level? Are you talking about which level?
Or just characteristics, characteristics about a person that help them with that awareness.
I think people who are really aware are those who have a lot of confidence in themselves. And it's that fine line between confidence and ego. Those who are really comfortable in their own skin can look at me and say, Justin, I suck today. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at this. But these are what my strengths are. And generally speaking, it's the higher level athletes who've taken a beating a few times, who've got taken through the ringer a few times. Those are the ones who can adequately look at their failures and look at their mistakes, because they know they have the power to correct them. They have the power and the ability to make those weaknesses strong, and to be able to say, you know what, I'm not good at that, but I'm so strong at this part of my game that I can compensate for this. Now, on the flip side of that, there are some people who are so prideful and are so worried so much about what other people think that they can't even look at themselves in the mirror. They can't even be honest with themselves because they care too much about what other people think about them. And I can right off the bat, you can listen to them. And when I say, okay, what are some of your weaknesses? Where do you need to work on? And some are like, you know what? I don't know. I don't know really what I need to work on. That right there is not necessarily a red flag, but that teaches me. I'm like, okay, this guy or girl doesn't, for some reason, there's a block there. They don't want to tell me what their weaknesses are. And that might be a result of our relationship isn't there. A lot of times guys don't open up to me until later because they have this front. They don't want to look bad. But and another reason just might be they just lack awareness. Their eyes have not been opened because mom and dad and coaches have told them their entire lives how good they are. Oh, you're so good, you're so great. And no one's ever been able to tell them, no, you have a lot of deficiencies and this is where you need to get better. And when they do run into a coach for the first time who's like that, they put their guard up and they say, oh, this coach is bad. Oh, he's not good because – and it's not that the coach isn't good, it's because their entire life they've been told how good of a person and good of an athlete they are, and not the things they need to get better.
Right. You said something really interesting, that people know they have the power to change. Let's talk about that a little bit. Before we started, you brought up the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. Can you talk about the two different kinds of mindsets and how that relates to these athletes?
Yes, love this book. If you're listening to this, and it doesn't matter if you're a reader, non-reader, get the audio book, Mindset by Carol Dweck. And she says there's a difference between the best and the rest. And it's these two different mindsets. You're either the growth mindset or you're the fixed mindset. And there are 5 characteristics that separate the two. Number 1 is failure. The growth mindset, they learn from failure. The fixed mindset, they are destroyed by it, emotionally disabled by it, because failure is not an event. It defines who they are. Number 2 is obstacles. The growth mindset person is going to embrace obstacles. They want the hard thing because it's going to make them better. The fixed mindset, they avoid obstacles. They don't want to do the hard thing because of their relationship with failure, because they might fail. And so they want to stay easy, keep the expectation bar very low. Number 3 is effort level. The growth mindset person, they focus on their effort. They know that if they give their best every day, their best is gradually going to get better. In addition to that, no excuses. They don't care if they're sore. They don't care if the circumstance is against them. They don't care if they're losing by a lot or winning by a lot. They keep giving their best effort. Fixed mindset, you can read this from a mile away. When the situation isn't conducive to their liking, or they don't feel good, their effort level is going to drop. hands down, that's totally the fixed mindset person. Number 3 is feedback. Number 4 is feedback. Growth mindset person, they embrace feedback. They embrace coaching because it's going to make them better. They know that a coach's job isn't to make them feel better, but their coach's job is to help them be better. The fixed mindset, when they get coached up, when they get some feedback, some critical feedback, they take offense to it. It's a hit to their ego. And the last one, number 5, is the success of others. When a growth mindset person sees another man or woman thrive and succeed and breaks records, it inspires them. It drives them. It lights their fire. It says, okay, they can do it. Okay, watch me. Now I'm going to do it too. Or I'm going to beat that person. Fixed mindset, when they see someone else succeed, they get jealous. They feel threatened. And they start kind of talking bad behind that person's back, saying, oh, they got lucky, or it's their genetics, or whatever it may be. And so those are the 5 differences between the fixed and the growth mindset person.
So Justin, is someone just inherently has a fixed mindset or a growth mindset?
I think it is a combination of two. I think that we talk about the nature and the nurture, and she even says it as well. There is this nature and nurture. Some people are just born. They just kind of, it's almost inherent. Just kind of like some people inherent, they could run fast. Inherent, they could throw well. Inherent, they just have that natural strength. Yes, there is that part. However, what we learned from the research and what she's saying, because of neuroplasticity in the brain, is you can be taught. You can learn how to develop the traits of the of the growth mindset. Just like anything, you don't need to be sick to get better. People don't go into a CrossFit box. You don't get rejected to go into a box because you're weak. It's like, no, you take a person where they are and you make them stronger. And I believe that's the same thing with mental skills and the growth mindset as well. Hey, you come in, hey, this is where you are. Hey, you might have a little bit of fixed mindset in you. We all do. We all have. But here, this is what a growth mindset person does. And as you bring this to their awareness and help them understand, oh man, that's a growth mindset thought. Oh man, this is a growth. I'm showing growth. This is a fixed mindset behavior I'm showing right now. As you label it and have a coach label that for you, hey, that's a fixed mindset attitude right there. All of a sudden, they can correct that. What I see a lot of times is you can't correct what you are not aware of. And what I love about this book, it just brings awareness to this fixed mindset. You're going to read this book. Someone's going to read this book and be like, wow, I have such a fixed mindset. Just that awareness right there is going to help you shift into the growth mindset and practice a growth mindset mentality.
Oh, that's fucking awesome, man. I was literally just talking about this book yesterday with my uncle, and we were kind of marveling over the fact that, a lot of people know that they can change their physical aptitude. We can study and get smarter, but a lot of people still tend to think that they're either a negative or a positive person, or all the like different emotional things, the way that they deal with emotions and things like that are always fixed, and they're just not. We can teach ourselves to deal with those kinds of things better as well, correct?
100% agree. I 100% agree with that, and I've seen it time and time and time again. I get email after email of people saying, hey, I'm learning to control my response to adversity. Man, I've learned how to be positive in a negative situation. These are people, email after email and story after story, and people who are learning how to train their brain and to control that. And yeah, I agree.
Kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, it's all intertwined, right? If you deal with this in a way that's going to help you perform better, you're also helping yourself live a happier, more stress-free life.
I agree. And the thing that we always tell people, and I'm a realistic optimist. I'm just real.
Right.
And I always tell people, a lot of people are like, oh, this is going to help me be a better baseball player. It's going to help me be a better, stronger, whatever. Yeah, those results might come. They might come. But ultimately what this does is it helps you understand that you will have stress. You will lose. You will get punched in the face. But what are you going to do about it? You can respond effectively or ineffectively. And there was somebody I was working with who's like, oh, now I'm not going to have fear. Now I'm not going to have stress. Now I'm not going to have anxiety. I was like, whoa, pump the brakes, bro. You are going to have those things. And they're like, oh, I am? It's like, yeah, you are. But now you know how to respond. Now you're trained on what to do when those things happen and when adversity strikes. And some of these top athletes, the best of the best, man, these guys have been men and women have been broken physically, mentally, emotionally, but they bounce back. They've trained themselves to how to bounce back faster. They get down, but they don't stay down long like the average person. They pick themselves up and they keep going, and that's the mark of a true champion.
Right. You talk a lot about purpose on your podcast. How do you define that, and why does that apply to sports psychology?
I see so many people who just go through the motions. And when you know why you do what you do, you're going to have more power to do it. Purpose is power. When you can attach every single little drill, the way you eat, the way you think, the way you train, when you can tie that to a bigger purpose, the research shows this. Your focus is enhanced, your persistence through adversity is enhanced, your determination that goes along with that, your effort level goes up. And this is science. That's just what science shows. And so one of the ways to do that, so many people are like, man, I wish I was more focused. I wish I could bounce back from adversity, from tough times. If you want to do that for yourself, do yourself a favor and attach your actions to a purpose. Do things on purpose with purpose. And that's one of the things, when you see elite athletes, they don't go through the motion in the weight room. They don't go through the motion. They eat. When they eat, they know they're fueling their machine. They don't eat for pleasure. They eat because they're fueling this machine, because this gas, this fuel they're going to use, it's fuel to perform at a high level on the field. And so when you have a purpose, it's not a drag to do the difficult things. You're doing it. You're doing it. Muhammad Ali has one of my favorite quotes: suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion. And so it gives you a purpose to your suffering.
Right. So if there are people listening to this that, there are a lot of people who their purpose is making it to the CrossFit Games. There are way more people listening to this that know that they have no shot at making it to that level. They're more concerned with having fun, and their purpose is other than sport. I'm sure you get this question because I get it all the time. How do you find your purpose? How would you suggest people go about that if this is new stuff to them?
Yeah, I would start off by asking yourself these 3 questions. Why? And just journal it or whatever. Just think about these. Number 1 is, why do you do what you do? What do you want to accomplish doing what you do? And how do you want to be remembered doing what you do? Now, those 3 questions, basically, they just get the juices flowing. They get the ball rolling. And then to look back at your life. Another thing I love to do is to look back at your life and to identify moments in your life where you can say you were highly motivated. And what was it? And just start to just deconstruct that moment of your life. Maybe you were trying to impress someone. Maybe it was for a grade. Maybe it was for money. Maybe it was to prove somebody wrong. Maybe. The key for motivation is, what motivates you might not motivate me, might not motivate somebody else, but to identify and to own your motivation. There was somebody who I was talking to, and they were doing spin class. There was a lady, she was trying to lose weight. I was working with her, and we're trying to find her purpose. And she calls me up. She goes, Justin, I figured out what doesn't motivate me. I said, okay, what is it? And she gives me this example. She was in spin class, and she was highly motivated. She was having a blast. She was locked in, focused. But the moment the instructor said, okay, now spin as if you're racing the person next to you, she said immediately her effort level and her emotions just dropped. And I said, that's interesting. And she says, once he said you're racing against somebody else, I didn't want to do it anymore. It just left me. And she ended up realizing, wow, the thing that drives her is fun, just love for doing what she does, just intrinsic motivation. I spin because I love it, nothing more, nothing less. But when she also realized that she's not a competitor. The moment is her against somebody else, that's when motivation drops. And so that's just eye-opening. I'm the opposite. I'm like, I turn it up a few notches, 5 notches when it's a competition, but when I'm just by myself, maybe not so much. And so whatever your motivation is, you don't have to hide it. You don't have to keep it. You don't have to be ashamed of it. Your motivation is your motivation. And so I would say those 3 questions: identify what motivates you. And here's another thing: sometimes you'll have different triggers for motivation in different aspects of your life. So what motivates you as a CrossFit athlete might not motivate you in a classroom, might not be the thing that motivates you as a parent or an instructor or a leader or an owner of a box or whatever it may be. And so to know and identify, okay, what is it? But it does take a little homework. It does take a little thinking and reflective work. And also be aware as well, because the motivation might change. It might change on you if you're not aware. And so what motivated you as a 19-year-old might not motivate you after you get married. And it might not motivate you after you have a child. All of a sudden, the child might be a new motivator. And so just to know that channels might change on you, just to be aware of it.
I love that, man. And this community is not afraid of the homework. So hopefully we get a lot of people trying that stuff. That's awesome.
Awesome.
What are the most common mental barriers you see in athletes and leaders? If you had to name, go ahead.
Yeah. You
got it.
One of the big ones is how they respond to adversity. How do you respond when you get punched in the face?
Does this include loss?
This includes losing. Okay. This includes everything. When the picture in your mind is not matching up with the reality of your current circumstance, that is hands down the number one thing I see people struggle with all the time. They're training for the big moment. They go out there and they suck, and they all of a sudden they just do not perform. It's what they do in that moment. That is where we see people struggle. And my advice to this person, and my advice, if you're listening to this and you don't do well with failure, my first thing is welcome to the club. Like, no one likes to fail. No one likes to fail. But if you can learn how to strengthen your relationship with failure, that is going to help you grow tremendously. It's in every aspect of your life. The people who can sit with failure and to soak in the struggle, those are the ones who succeed. Now, how do you do this? What's really interesting, I always tell people, in my time with the military, I learned something very valuable just being an observer. These soldiers, combat medics, whatever it may be, they train for a worst case scenario. They train for it. They know exactly how to respond when their weapon jams, exactly how to respond if their battle buddy, someone in their unit, gets shot and killed. They train for those moments. And the reason they train for those moments is because when it happens, not if it happens, but when it happens in combat, it doesn't activate the emotional part of their brain. It activates the thinking part of their brain. It's called the prefrontal cortex. And they're not panicking. They are prepared for it, and they know what to do to respond. But what we see in the civilian sector, when we see for you and me and these people who are listening, what happens is these people are not these people, but the average person gets mad just sitting in traffic. Mm-hmm. They get mad when they're in a long line. They get mad when the umpire or the referee makes a bad call. And how can you allow something like that to affect you emotionally when you're trying to be an elite performer? It's like you just don't do that. Elite performers don't respond that way. And if you're thinking, you're like, hey, Justin, how do I respond better to adversity? My answer is you prepare for it. I was working with a player once who just, when he struck out, an amateur player, a high school player, actually much younger than high school, but he would always just go crazy, start swearing, cussing, throwing his bat, just uncontrolled. And then it would bleed into the rest of the game. We sat down, we identified a strikeout plan. This is how I'm going to respond to a strikeout. He wrote it down, he identified it, and then when he struck out, this was part of the plan. He knew it was going to happen. He knew how he was going to respond. All of a sudden, wouldn't you know it, he responded a lot more effectively to adversity. He still hated it. It still sucked. It was still horrible. He still struck out a lot, but it didn't bleed into the rest of the game. He was still able to have a better performance, and he bounced back a lot faster. And so for those of you who are listening to this, my invitation would be to write down all of your pet peeves, all the things that get you hot, that get you mad. And then identify, how do you want to respond to it? What do you want to say to yourself? How should you carry yourself? What's going to be your routine when you're stuck in traffic? What are you going to remind yourself of? How are you going to look at it differently so that you don't blow up? And lo and behold, your brain's going to start searching for those moments. And when it happens, that's a perfect time for you to practice that. And that right there is going to help them strengthen their relationship with failure and adversity. And once they can do that and control that, that's when they're going to be able to really grow and to learn from failure and to not allow it to disable them emotionally.
What can people do to build their confidence? And this is, I know, intertwined in all of what you're talking about right now, but how do you deal with that issue?
I think you said something key is build their confidence. People, the common notion is I'm confident when I'm doing well. I'm not confident when I'm not doing well. And that's crazy to think that's crazy to think that, because that means that you are just this boat in the middle of the ocean with no sail, and you're going to be confident when things are good, not confident when things are down. But you hit the nail on the head, Michael, when you said you can create it. There are different ways to create it. And the analogy I give is an elevator with people. I say, imagine having an elevator with one cord, with one cable, versus an elevator with 10 cables. And I always ask people, which one would you feel more confident to ride in? And everyone says, obviously, the one with 10 cables supporting it. And the question I say is why? It's kind of dumb, but why? And they say, well, if one breaks, then you have 9 others that are there. But in the one, if it breaks, then you're done. And that's how people view confidence. They view it as a one cable elevator. If I'm doing well, I'm confident. If I'm not confident. But there are other sources of confidence. Preparation can build your confidence, knowing that you're certain that you put in the work to prepare for it. Self-talk, what you say to yourself, can build confidence. Another way to build confidence is the people who support you, the words from others. When people can help show you things that you're good at, that can build your confidence. Past success can build you confidence. You might not be succeeding right now, but look back in the moments that you have succeeded and just think about those things and remember what you did to succeed back then. Hey, you can do this. You've overcome hard things before and you can do it here. That can build confidence. Another thing that can build confidence is just knowing that, hey, you're going to fail. You're going to fail and you're going to be okay. You still have other aspects of your life. Take a look at the big picture and, hey, you just had one. Don't let one bad day make you think that you're a bad human. Hey, you're still a husband. You're still a wife. You're still a father. You're still an employee. And hey, you're going to come back. That builds confidence. And so when I sit down with people and they're like, oh, I lack confidence, it's not that they lack confidence because what they see. It's they lack confidence because of things they don't see. They're not paying attention. They're so zoom focused on this one single solitary aspect that things aren't going well. Right. My job is to help them take a step back and look at all these other things that they can be confident in. But this is the big kicker. This is the kicker. You can succeed even if you don't have confidence. I always tell a lot of people that sometimes confidence is overrated, because here's the example I give people. How many times have you gone into something feeling confident and just did terrible? And they're like, yeah, that's happened before. Huh, that's interesting. Then I say, how many times have you gone into something and you didn't feel very confident going in, but you crushed it? And they say, yeah, that's happened too. I say, well, what does that tell you about confidence? They're like, oh, it tells you that sometimes it can lie to you. So what we tell people is the best of the best. I would tell someone who lacks confidence is stop taking counsel from your feelings and focus on your actions. Feelings don't matter when the game is on the line. In performance, your feelings don't matter. Focus on what you're going to do about it. Focus on actions and not feelings. I read a book called Resilience by Eric Greitens. I would recommend anyone reading this. And he says, a Navy SEAL, you will never hear a Navy SEAL ask another Navy SEAL in the heat of combat, how do you feel? You'll never ask them. You'll never hear them, how do you feel? The reason is it's because feelings don't matter. They focus on the mission, on the task. Right. What's my job? And also Jerry West said, if you only worked out or performed on the days you felt good, you wouldn't feel good. I see a lot of people who don't go work out, who don't perform at their best, and they don't do what they should be doing because they don't feel good. because they feel sad. And if you feel sad, you're going to act sad. If you focus on your feeling, if I feel stressed, then I'm going to act stressed.
Right.
Just because you don't feel confident, that shouldn't stop you from acting like a champion. And so that's what we tell people in terms of confidence. I always say, hey, here are the ways to build it. But ultimately, if you don't feel confident, go do it anyway.
Right. So it's the idea of feeling is just that. It's just a feeling, and it doesn't control you. So you can act differently no matter what that feeling is, right? So if people are failing because of these emotions, then they're probably focusing on these emotions, right?
That's exactly it. Okay. You give power to what you focus on. That's exactly it.
Okay. So the best of the best, the Cy Young Award winners, the Golden Glove winners, the very best athletes in the world that you work with, what do they have upstairs mentally that the others don't? And another way to look at it, what do they not have?
Yeah. Well, they don't feel sorry for themselves. That's one thing. These guys and men and women, they just do not feel sorry for themselves. And they are not afraid to look in the mirror and see all of what they need to do better. And going along with that, they have this relentless pursuit of progress. This relentless pursuit of progress. And they just this year's championship is not good enough. They want to win next year. And next year's isn't good enough. They want to win next year. And they're constantly competing to be the best. They want to be the absolute best. And they don't settle for mediocrity. Like, that's another thing. They just do not settle for mediocrity. And going along with that is they have the ability to motivate themselves. They don't whine that they have a bad coach. They don't whine that the gym is too far. They don't whine about the bad weather. They are just self-driven. So that's how I kind of bundle all of that into something. Another one is kind of goes along a theme that we've been talking about. These guys learn from failure. They just learn from it. They use it as data, they use it as feedback, and they use it to go and they get better. They aren't attached. Yeah, they emotionally they hate it, but they use it to get better. And I think that is something that's huge. And another thing is they are willing to sacrifice what they want to do for what they must do to be a champion. They're willing to sacrifice. People, a quote I saw the other day is, everyone wants to be a beast until they have to do what beasts do.
Right.
And same thing. Everyone wants to be a champion elite until they realize what the elite do. The elite, they sacrifice. But you ask them, oh man, what a sacrifice, and they would say, that's not a sacrifice. I want to be the best. Mm-hmm. And they eat differently, they sleep differently, they talk differently, all these things, but it's not a sacrifice to them because they always have their purpose tattooed to their mind, to their forehead. And I would say there's another thing, they're very purpose driven, very, very purpose driven. And it's just this passion. They're obsessed with what they want to do. And not only are they willing to do the hard things, but another thing is they're willing to do the seemingly boring and mundane things over and over and over again. Some people say they want to be great, and they're like, oh, I wake up at 3 a.m. to work out. Or, oh, I'm willing to do this. Yeah, that's cool. That's quote-unquote sexy. People are putting up on social media, oh, 5 a.m., time to hit the gym, time to work out. Okay, that's great. But are you willing to do the boring minutia? And people aren't willing to do that. And I don't know what that looks like in the CrossFit world. I know what it looks like in the baseball world.
What do they look like in the baseball world?
In the baseball world, it's taking ground balls over and over and over and over again. It is not sexy. It is not something like, wow, that's great. It's something that is just so boring. But they do it, and they want to perfect it over for hours. Hitting off a tee. You put a ball on the tee and you hit it. And you just hit it, and you hit the ball, and you hit the ball, and you hit the ball over and over and over again in a cage. You don't know where the ball is going. It doesn't travel very far. And it's the same boring thing over again, but the best do it for hours. But some people are like, oh, that's too boring. And so they're willing to do those boring things.
Right, and then they're not hitting the long ball, so they don't see the
Right.
value in it. So I'm gonna spell
Exactly.
this out for some of the listeners that don't understand. The boring stuff in CrossFit in functional fitness is that's your gymnastics skill work, where you're swinging back and forth. You're not doing a muscle up. You're not doing a handstand push up. You're just doing position work. You're doing light barbell work instead of heavy weightlifting, right? So it's all of these things that are not you'll never be tested on, but they are drills that are going to make you better at the sport. So that's huge. That is huge. People neglect this stuff like the plague. So,
You just reminded me one more to add to that, just kind of put a punctuation mark on what you just said, and this is it. Attention to detail. The elite have this unbelievable attention to detail that the average mediocre athlete and performer does not.
And it's not, I mean, some people will just naturally have that, but it's not something that you can't develop. You just have to focus on the details, right? And then before long, those just become habits.
Yes, and I love that. I love how that's the theme of all of this. I hope somebody is not listening to this and saying, "Oh man, that's just not me. That's just not me. I guess I'm screwed because I wasn't given those genes." You are right, and I want everyone to remember. Just you don't have to be sick to get better. Wherever you are, everything that Michael and I are talking about today, that I've been, all these techniques, you can improve in all these things, and motivation and focus. And that's the underlying principles that you can change. And that's the underlying principle behind all this.
Justin, where does blaming fit into all of this? You know, in baseball, it's blaming the coach, the umpire. In CrossFit, a lot of times it's blaming the judge. Right, they'll make a subjective call, and people say I had a bad judge. They were too strict on me, etc. How does this fit into mental performance?
The moment an athlete could look in a mirror and just take extreme ownership and just absolutely own everything, that's when you are going to be liberated from yourself. You're not going to make any excuses. To be able to have the discipline, that self-discipline, to just own it. And that is hard to do. That is very, very hard to do, because it is easy to place the blame. It is easy to blame an umpire, to blame a judge, to blame a coach, to blame the weather. That's what everybody does. That's the natural, normal, easy thing to do. But the best of the best are the ones who can look in and say, that's on me. That's on me. You know what? I shouldn't have even left it that close. I shouldn't have even it's so neat to be part of a team. And if there's a book called Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink, Navy SEAL. You've got to listen to this guy explain this. He calls it, extreme ownership, where he says the best leaders, they do not make excuses. They don't take blame. They are the ones who own it, even when it is completely out of their control. And so he gives an example where they were doing this friendly fire and ended up being blue on blue. Basically, that means that somebody died in a training. Somebody got killed in a training. And so all of these officials came, and someone was about to get fired, and he was the one who was running it. And so everyone who was involved in it was in there, and somebody said, you know what, I went past the line. Another person went, no, it's my fault because of this, and no, it's my fault because of this, and everyone's placing blame on themselves. And Jocko says, no, all of this is my fault. And everyone looks at him, they're like, no, it isn't your fault. He goes, no, because and then he went to every single person. He goes, that wouldn't have happened if I would have trained you better. No, I should have done this if you would have. And he just went through everybody and says, nope, it's my fault. And it kind of took everyone back, because he really did train everybody, but he took ownership for everybody else's miscues. And he went on to say, he goes, as a leader, that's your job. That's just what you do. And to have that self-ownership, just to own it. And there are no excuses. You'll hear a lot of people say, oh, a baseball player, a former baseball player, oh, I didn't get drafted because I got injured. Oh, I didn't get drafted because I played at a small school. It's like, no, you didn't get drafted because you weren't good enough. Just say it. Just say it. Because if you were good and you were injured, then they still would have drafted you. They do that for a lot of people. if you played at a small school and you were still good, they still would have drafted you because they're drafting people who don't even play high school baseball or whatever. They just have the talent. But if you're listening to this and you could just own it and say, no, that's on me. That is completely on me. And next time, I'm not even going to make it close. I'm going to be so good that they can't even ignore it. Right. And that's the thing about as I work with gymnasts and I work with dancers and I work with anytime you're in a sport where you have human judges, it's very easy to get at perfectionism and place a blame. But just own it. Just say, you know what? I'm going to take 100% ownership and I'm going to take charge of this. And that's amazing power comes from that.
I mean, when you blame something outside of yourself, it's outside of your control, right? You cannot get better if it's the judge's fault. So if it's your fault, then your focus is on how can I improve my game rather than being angry at this judge or ump or ref or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's you back in the driver's seat.
Right. I think it's the same in relationships in general, right? If we focus on what the other person did wrong, that's completely outside of our control and we can't change the situation. If we focus on our side of the street, we have some control over the outcome.
Yeah, I agree. I was listening to somebody the other day, and he was describing, so he's single, he wants to find this a person, he's ready to get settled down and find a long-term relationship, and he started talking about what he wants in a woman. Oh, I want her to be kind, and I want her to be fit, and I want her to be. And he started listing like his quote-unquote dream girl, dream woman, and the person who was listening to this said, "Who are you? Who are you to think that this dream woman would even want you? Who are you to think that you're so good that you can have this list on that? Okay, this is going to be the woman." And what he said after that was really interesting. He goes, like attracts like. Like attracts like. Game recognizes game. And he says, if you want this person, the best way to attract this person is to be that person. You need to work on your patience. You need to work on your fitness. You need to work on your discipline and getting it and all these things. And I was listening. I was like, man, that's so true. And it kind of hit the guy because he's sitting back and waiting for this dream woman to come to him. And he's not even putting in the effort he's that ownership. He doesn't have the driver's seat to be that ownership. And so I like what you said. It's like, don't give power to other people. You don't give power for people that have that control, whether it be judges or whatever. Own it. Own your own happiness.
Right. Yeah, that's fascinating what he said. I love that. I got a few more questions for you before we wrap up.
Yeah.
So how can people change their internal dialogue? We hear all the time that we're supposed to be positive and avoid negativity, but it doesn't seem like something that we can just will and make it happen automatically. What are some actionable things that people can do to change the way they talk to themselves?
That is an awesome question. This is actually one of the most popular questions I get, and you're right. Some people will give the advice, hey, just get over it. Hey, just be positive. Just think positive. And then you're like, of course, like I would like to do that, but I just can't do that. And so that makes sense. And I'd always say first, start with awareness. You've got to be aware of where your internal dialogue is. The people who aren't aware, they're the ones who fall victim to these negative thoughts and these negative emotions. And it's just kind of just unbeknownst to them. They just allow these thoughts to come in and it just starts pecking away at their emotions and it impacts their behavior, and then they just struggle. So after you're aware of it, then what I would start saying is stop listening to yourself and start talking to yourself. Stop listening to yourself and start talking to yourself. Now, somebody will hear this and say, well, you don't want to lie to yourself. You don't want to just paint rainbows and things. Everything is awesome and great. And my elaboration on that is no. You're not. Your job isn't to just lie to yourself. If let's say there's a workout that just sucks, a WOD that just sucks. You're like, this, I do not like this. You can say that. You can say, I don't like this or this sucks, but you got to finish the sentence. But you know what? I know this is going to make me better. Oh man, the judge was wrong or this and that. He totally screwed me over. But I'm going to go back and hit the gym and I'm going to make sure that never happens again. And so basically what I'm saying is I'm acknowledging the facts. I'm saying that, yeah, what ended up happening is not ideal, but I'm going to remain in control and I'm going to use it to make me better. And so it's really finishing the negative self-talk. It's finishing it to show that you are in control of it. Oh man, I'm in terrible shape. Man, I don't look good in these clothes, but you know, I'm going to work hard and I have control over it. So that's what I say to that. In addition to this, I would say to repeat for people to remember that thoughts are just thoughts. It's not truth. Having negative thoughts does not mean you're a negative person. It means you're human. You're going to have negative thoughts. We're all going to have negative thoughts. But the problem comes when you believe them. And when you try to block them out. Here's something to not do. Don't try to block them out. Because if you're listening to this and I say, don't think about an elephant, don't think about an elephant, you're going to think about an elephant. Because our mind sees in pictures. And so a common knee-jerk reaction for people is, oh, don't think about that. Just don't think about failing. Don't think about that. Sports psychology 101 is to avoid from doing that. Don't tell yourself don't, because the mind doesn't understand the word don't. All you're going to do is fill your head with the pictures of the very thing you're trying to avoid. And so just to kind of tighten that up for everybody, number one, awareness. Be aware of your thoughts. Number two, stop listening to yourself. Stop listening to yourself. Start talking to yourself. And number three, you don't have to just understand that thoughts are just thoughts and you don't have to believe them. Just let them come and go as clouds in the sky.
That leads me to my next question. Where does mindfulness and breathing exercises have any place in your practice?
Absolutely. I talk about it all the time. The way I look at mindfulness and breathing is I look at it as like training a dog. If you take a dog and it's untrained and you put it in the middle of a field, take it off the leash, and you let it go, it's going to run all over the place. You're going to yell at it. You're going to tell it to stop, stay, sit, and it's not going to listen to a word you say, not because it's a bad dog, but because it's untrained. But you take that dog and you train it, you help it you just train it. You take that same dog on that same leash to the same field. After the training, you take it off the leash. What's that dog going to do? It's going to do whatever you want. Why? Because it's trained. And what mindfulness, meditation, and breathing does, it helps your brain do the same thing. An untrained mind or brain is just like that untrained dog. It's going to run to fear. It's going to run to doubt. It's going to run to the past. It's going to run to the future. And you're going to say, stop, sit, stay. And your brain and your mind is not going to stop, sit, or stay, not because you're a loser, but because it's untrained. But if you can practice mindfulness, if you can sit still for a few minutes a day and just focus on your breathing, what you're doing is you're increasing the gray matter in your brain and you're teaching your brain to be still, to focus on the breath, on one thing. Now, what people do is they get frustrated. They get frustrated because they're like, oh, that's so hard to do, Justin. Oh, my mind starts to wander. And I would tell them, that's part of the workout.
Welcome to the club again.
Exactly. That's why you're doing it. And every single time you catch yourself, your mind wandering, and you bring it back to your breath, that is a rep. That's a rep. And they're like, oh. And I say, your mind is supposed to wander. And that's part of the training. And so it'll go to the past and you bring it to the breath. It'll go to the future and you bring it to the breath. It'll go to your finances and you bring it to your breath. You're going to do it 50, 60, 20, 30, however many times. And that is the purpose of the activity. And if you're going to practice it, if you've ever given up on it because you're like, oh, I can't quiet my mind, my answer to that is, of course. Like, that is a part of the training. Every time you go, your mind wanders and you bring it back, that's rep number one. You just got stronger.
That is
so just stick with it.
Phenomenal way of framing that. It's a workout, not just some spirituality practice, right?
Yeah, that's it.
I love that. And I hear probably more often than not, oh, I'm not good at meditation. I don't know how you're so good at it. There's no good or bad at meditation. It is just the practice, right?
Exactly, exactly. And when you get really good at doing that and practicing that, then this is the great thing. When the heat of the moment is on, when all of a sudden your emotions starting to boil and you see your mind starting to race and wander, now you're trained. Now all you gotta do is trigger your breathing. You bring your attention to your breathing, and all of a sudden your body is you're trained now. Now you're going to be in more control. You're going to be more relaxed. You're going to be more aware. It's going to help you get out of your own way and perform at a high level.
That's phenomenal. Do you have you heard of the app Headspace?
Yes, I am a huge fan.
Awesome.
That's the one app I recommend to everybody. When everyone's like, "Hey, give me a resource," I say, "Hey, Headspace."
All right, we're going to link that on the notes. I'm sure I've linked it
Awesome.
at least 3 times on different podcasts, and now
Awesome.
we have somebody with some significant authority telling people to use it. So
Yes.
hopefully we get thousands of new users on there.
Love it.
I have one more question for you, man. What and I'll give you I'll define it for you. What do you want to make absurd in 20 years? An example of this is 20 years ago, it was common for a grocery store clerk to be smoking, and today it is absurd. 20 years ago, it was common to throw an entire bag of McDonald's out of the window. Today, it's absurd in most places. What do you personally want to make absurd?
That is a really, really good question. Are you talking about, and I just want to clarify, for me personally, or just kind of my impact on other people, if I would like to see?
The latter.
Okay. I think it is absurd. It is absurd for people to respond effectively and in control to adverse moments. It is absurd for people not to panic when things don't go their way. And I would love to see that happen, to take part. I know it's going to be an army to take part, for people to grab this notion that they can change and that they can respond effectively to adversity. The reason it's so absurd is because it's not easy to do. The natural knee-jerk reaction to adversity or to not getting your way is to throw a fit, is to panic, is to get mad, or to not respond effectively. I would love to be part of this movement. Mind you, I don't even know what the name of this movement would be, but this part of this movement to where you are in control of your situation. You are able to think clearly, to respond effectively when adversity strikes. And that is absolutely absurd. People just don't do that every day. That just doesn't happen.
That's a great answer, man. And through your your formal work with teams and leaders and organizations, I know you're doing that, and your podcast is an absolute extension of that same thing. Where can what's the name of your podcast again, so people can go check this out?
Yeah, name of my podcast is Increase Your Impact. Increase Your Impact, and it's very simple. This is for those of you who who maybe don't have time to listen for a very long time. It's only less than 10 minutes. Each episode is less than 10 minutes, and I'll drop a new one every weekday.
And then if people want to dive into training their mind more, you named mindset, extreme ownership, and resilience. Are there any other ones that come to mind off the top of your head that you would recommend people checking out?
Yeah, go get Heidi Grant Halverson has a book called Succeed by Heidi Grant Halverson. The reason I like that one so much, there's a lot of how-to practical applications for it. And one more, Mind Gym by Gary Mack. Mind, M-I-N-D, Gym by Gary Mack. Go get that one, and I think you'll really like those. I mean, and I'm gonna put in plug for my own book. I'm an author as well. There's a book called my book is called Parent Pep Talks. If you're a parent listening to this, you have children, and you're like, man, my son or my daughter is so mentally weak. I wrote a book for parents with kids who you want to help them be mentally tough. All this stuff I talked about in this podcast episode with you, Michael, I put in my book, How Do You Instill It in Your Kids? And it's called Parent Pep Talks.
Hell yeah. Where can people find you on social media?
Twitter, @Justin Sua, JUSTINSUA. I'm also on Instagram, and just reach out to me. I'm a follow back guy. And so if I'm following you, just, hey, Justin, follow me back. And then a lot of my conversations are on DM, direct message. You can email me, justin@justinsua.com, JUSTIN at JUSTINSUA.com. I'm really, really accessible, really easy to get a hold of.
Awesome, man. Guys, we're going to have all of the resources and stuff like that, all the books, hyperlinked in the show notes. So to check that out, you can go to brutestrengthtraining.com/podcast and click on this podcast when we release it. Justin, thank you so much, man. This was incredible.
Oh, it was such a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on.
All right, brother. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.